Before Olympus had a throne, the universe was a battlefield. Here, before Zeus became king, gods fought gods for the right to define reality itself. Which raises the stranger question: if this war created order, why does it begin with a family eating its own future? This is the story of the Titanomachy, the divine war that made Olympian rule possible, and the myth that asks whether order is ever born clean. This is MYTHOLOGY. The Titanomachy is often treated like a simple origin story, especially in modern retellings that rush straight towards Zeus and the thunderbolt. Old gods fall, new gods rise, and later tradition imagines the cosmos divided among Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. But when I looked closer, the story felt much less like a victory parade. It felt like a warning. Because the myth doesn't begin with justice, it begins with fear. The world before Zeus. In the beginning, Greek myth gives us chaos, Gaia, and the first raw powers of existence. Gaia, the earth, brings forth Uranus, the sky, and together they produce the Titans. But this first divine household is not peaceful. Uranus hates some of his own children, especially the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires. The Hecatoncheires are the 100-handed ones, monstrous children of Gaia with 50 heads and overwhelming strength. According to the mythic tradition, Uranus hides them away in the depths of the earth. That detail matters because the first cosmic ruler maintains power by burying what frightens him, turning the structure of the universe itself into a locked room. Gaia suffers under this order, and she turns to her Titan children for help. Only Kronos answers. He overthrows Uranus, takes power, and becomes ruler of the Titans. At first, this looks like liberation, but Kronos has learned the wrong lesson. He learns that fathers can be overthrown by children. So when prophecy says his own child will replace him, Kronos does what tyrants do. He tries to control time itself. Chapter 1. The family that devoured itself. Kronos marries Rhea, and one by one their children are born. Hestia comes first, then Demeter, then Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Each time, Kronos swallows the child. It is a horrifying image, but it is also a precise political idea. Kronos doesn't kill the future, he imprisons it inside himself. That is why the myth works so well. It turns fear of succession into an image nobody forgets. And the image has a built-in contradiction. If the children remain alive, the prophecy remains alive too. Kronos thinks he has sealed the future, but he has only stored the rebellion in one place. Rhea finally refuses to lose another child. When Zeus is born, she hides him. She gives Kronos a stone wrapped in cloth instead. Kronos swallows it, and the king of the Titans is fooled by the simplest thing in mythology: a substitute. This is the first major turn of the story. The war against Kronos doesn't begin with lightning. It begins with concealment, timing, and a mother protecting the future. Chapter 2. Zeus builds a coalition. Zeus grows up away from Kronos, outside the devouring center of power. Different traditions fill in his childhood differently, and we should be honest about that. Greek myth is not one single official book, and that matters because variation is not a flaw in the evidence. It is part of how the tradition lived. It is a web of local tellings, poetic choices, and inherited divine names. But the central movement stays clear. Zeus returns, and Kronos is forced to release the children he swallowed. The substitute comes back out first, then the future comes back out. Now Zeus has siblings, but siblings alone are not enough to defeat the Titans. This is where the myth becomes more interesting than a family coup. Zeus looks beneath the old order. He gains the aid of the Cyclopes. They give him thunder, lightning, and the thunderbolt. That gift changes the balance of the story, because Zeus already wins by doing what Uranus and Kronos refuse to do. He turns buried power into allied power. But in Hesiod's account, the deepest turn is still waiting. The Hecatoncheires will matter most after the war has already dragged on. That is the second reveal. The future king of Olympus does not win because he is alone and stronger. He wins because he learns to use the powers the old order had excluded. Chapter 3. 10 Years of Deadlock. The Titanomachy lasts 10 years in the most famous tradition. That number may be poetic, but its meaning is clear. This is not a quick thunderbolt victory. It is a deadlock between generations. On one side stand the Titans, the older order. On the other stand Zeus and the rising Olympians. The war is cosmic, but its logic is painfully human. An old regime has lost legitimacy. A new regime has not yet proved it can rule. And everyone is trapped between fear of the past and fear of what comes next. The sources don't give us battlefield tactics in a modern sense. They give us images of overwhelming force. Thunder shakes the earth. Flame fills the air. The sea roars. This is not history in the way a battle inscription is history, and treating it like one would flatten what the evidence is actually doing. It is myth thinking through power. And the question the myth keeps asking is not just who can destroy, it is who can make a world after destruction. That is why the geography matters. Olympus is not merely a mountain in this story. Othrys is not merely the other camp. Tartarus is the hidden depth beneath the earth, the cosmic prison where earlier acts of violence remain unresolved. The battlefield sits between memory and possibility. The war cannot end until Zeus decides what to do with the depths. And in Hesiod's account, Gaia gives the crucial counsel. After 10 years of stalemate, Zeus releases Cottus, Briareus, and Gyges. That is why the Hecatoncheires matter so much. They are not decoration. They are the proof that Zeus's order depends on what the previous order buried. So, before the final turn, hold on to this. The Titanomachy is not won by bloodline alone. It is won by coalition. And that makes Zeus, in this reading, more politically effective than Kronos. Chapter 4. The Hundred-Handed Turn the War. When the Hecatoncheires enter the fight, the scale changes. Each one can hurl enormous stones with impossible force. In mythic terms, this is artillery before artillery. The Titans face not one weapon, but a storm of impacts. The Cyclopes have armed Zeus with lightning. The Hecatoncheires give him mass. Shock from the sky, weight from the earth, and between them, the Titans finally break. This is the third reveal. The Titanomachy is not just a story about Zeus being powerful. It is a story about power becoming organized. That matters because Greek divine order is not soft. It has weapons. It has ranks. It has borders. And it has punishments. After the defeat, the Titans are cast down into Tartarus. The Hecatoncheires become their guards. That part should make us pause. The freed prisoners become prison keepers. The myth doesn't pretend order is innocent. Olympus rises because someone is locked below it. That is darker than the simple version, and it is much more Greek. revelation. Order was not peace. So what is the secret of the Titanomachy? It isn't that good gods defeated bad gods. The Titans are not demons in the later sense, and the Olympians are not morally spotless saviors. The revelation is slower and sharper. In the Hesiodic succession myth, divine order is imagined as emerging through violence. But it survives by managing that violence, not erasing it. Suddenly, the pieces fit. Kronos fails because he tries to consume the future. Zeus succeeds because he releases buried powers and gives them a role, not simply as rescued victims, but as forces folded into the machinery of rule. But Zeus also repeats part of the pattern. He builds a better order, not a harmless one. That is why this myth lasts. It understands that civilization often begins after a struggle over who gets to define justice. The uncomfortable lesson is that legitimacy is not the same thing as innocence. Zeus can be the answer to Kronos and still carry the memory of Kronos inside his rule. And it asks whether any throne can escape the violence that created it. Implication and close. Looking back, the Titanomachy is not just background lore for Zeus. It is one of the central Greek myths explaining Zeus's sovereignty and the shape of Olympian rule. It explains why Olympus has ranks, weapons, borders, and punishments. It also reminds us that Greek myth rarely gives us pure beginnings. Creation comes tangled with conflict. Justice comes tangled with force, and order comes with a memory of what had to be buried. This divine war reminds us that power is never only about winning. It is about what the victor does with the defeated, what is restored, what is punished, and what is hidden deep enough that the surface can look calm. But the Titanomachy opens a harder question. If Zeus overthrew a tyrant, how long before he feared the same fate? I'm here to help you know how divine power was really imagined. Which part of the Titanomachy feels most dangerous to you? The prophecy, the prison, or the throne? See you at the next throne.